Hello, and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm Emma Thomas, your host, and I'm delighted to welcome along today Thalia Pellegrini, who's a registered nutritional therapist. After a decade as a broadcast journalist for the BBC, presenting programmes including Newsround and The Travel Show, and reporting for Holiday, she followed her passion for nutritional science and retrained. She qualified in 2009 following a 3-year course at the Institute of Optimum Nutrition in London, and her specialist interest is women's health with a focus on perimenopause. Known as the Knackered Mums Nutritionist, she runs her online signature group program, the Energized Mum Method, and works one-to-one with women in the UK, Europe, and North America, addressing health issues from PCOS, endometriosis, PMS, perimenopause, and menopause, fatigue, chronic fatigue, and low energy. Welcome to the podcast, Thalia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about sort of retraining later in life. I mean, that's quite a departure, isn't it, from the world of broadcast journalism?
Well, I love my job. When I worked in TV, it was a huge amount of fun. I was very lucky, and I got to travel the world and work with lots of wonderful people. But if I'm being honest, I got a little. I wasn't as fulfilled as I thought I could be, and I knew I wanted to be a mum. So this was before I had children, and I thought, you know what, there's something else I'm meant to be doing. And I'd never forgotten the lady that helped me in my 20s, a nutritionist. I had ME for 7 years. I got ill at 17, and I was ill for about 6.5, 7 years. And she changed my life. And I never forgot her. And I never forgot the fact that without her, I wouldn't have done all of those wonderful things for the BBC. And I thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to do for other people what she did for me. And it was quite a quick decision. I literally came home one day and said to my husband, you know what, I think this is what I want to do. We were living in West London at the time. I found Ion. It was down the road in Richmond. I literally, which is very me, applied the next day. They happened to have an intake for 3 months later. I went for an interview. I got in, and that was it. I never looked back. So I stayed at the BBC for the 3 years while I was studying, and then I graduated when I was pregnant with my first son.
So can you talk a little bit about ME then? Because obviously some people do suffer with it even longer term.
Yeah.
Than that. So you're saying that you kind of credit that kind of going into remission, or however you would describe it, as down to the nutritional side of things.
Yeah, so I got glandular fever at 17, like a million teenagers, and I just didn't get better. And I went to the GP. I kept going to the GP, and they said, well, it's post-viral fatigue. There's nothing we can do. It's, you have a virus called Epstein-Barr, and it will go, but it would flare. It kind of goes into, it quietens down, it goes to sleep, so to speak, and then it wakes up again, and I would get ill again. And I had it all the way through university, and then I graduated, got a job in London, and I just kept getting ill, and I couldn't lead a normal life at all because of this fatigue. And I had this, glands in my neck perpetually swollen. GP was like, we're really sorry, there's nothing we can do. And in desperation, one day I walked into a bookshop, because books have always been my solace. I've always found answers in books. And I went up to the wellness section, and there was a book called How to Beat Fatigue. And it was by a man called Patrick Holford. And he was the founder of the Institute of Optimum Nutrition. And I read that book, and the end of the book was a list of nutritionists, and there were really not very many. So we're talking, what year are we talking now? 97, 98. But one happened to live not too far away. And that was the lady I found and saw. And she took me through quite a rigorous protocol. But it's, she said, this is chronic fatigue syndrome, this is ME. And within 4 months, I was transformed. I was completely well. It was extraordinary. And that energy to go from those two extremes, from feeling so depleted and so exhausted all the time, to the point that I was scared to go out. I was scared to do anything because of the fatigue. So, I was a young woman. I was in my early 20s, and the anxiety that came with that, it was all so detrimental. It wasn't just that I was a bit tired. It's difficult to explain that kind of fatigue. It's such a bone weariness that I would have done anything. And to go from that fatigue to the energy I felt 4 months later was just extraordinary. It was just such a gift. I'm so grateful to her for that.
It must have felt almost like some kind of magical transformation.
Yes, it did. Yeah, it was extraordinary. Yeah, it was.
And now, because of the, you were saying off air that you're sort of you are yourself now coming into sort of this perimenopausal phase of life, and obviously the people that you're working with are often, not all, but many of them also kind of
Mm,
going through this as well, that you've
mm.
decided to focus on this as a
Yeah.
particular area for your kind of group and for your one-to-ones as well. So what are the kind of things that you have been sort of picking up on and sort of noticing, and is there any kind of alignment in terms of that sort of fatigue, because so many of us do kind of find that our energy levels are just on the floor at
Yeah.
this time of life.
I think what I was thinking about this morning, I was thinking about the fact that our health as women is so complex. Everyone's health is complex, but when we hit perimenopause, and bear in mind that can be in our late 30s or early 40s, there are different phases of perimenopause. There can be so many other things that we have put up with as normal for so long, like period pain, like menstrual migraines, bloating, constipation, PMS, for example. It's not like our bodies go, oh, do you know what? Guys, it's perimenopause time. You need to leave and we need to start. It just layers on. It layers on.
Mm,
So what happens is you can have all of those symptoms and find that then you're getting new symptoms you can't explain. And it's just too much. It's too much for us as women in terms of what we're trying to manage. Too difficult to manage it, I think, sometimes, in terms of that tiredness, that low energy, the stress, the overwhelm, the anxiety that comes with perimenopause. And it can be very specific symptoms like heart palpitations for some women, or I have so many clients who say their anxiety is off the charts and they can't correlate it to anything they're worried about. It's just takes their
mm,
breath away, and they, especially middle of the night kind of anxiety. So it's almost like when we get to our 40s and obviously into our 50s, what happens is that it's a bit of a car crash event hormonally of all the things we've put up with up until now and we haven't had the time to think about or deal with, and then we start to experience perimenopause, and the resulting effect of that is what you describe, is that so tired sometimes you don't feel like you can get up and get out of the door. So it's my job to unpick all those symptoms and work out what's driving them, what's the root causes, and they often predate perimenopause, and then we're dealing with perimenopause symptoms on top of that. So what I've learned is it's very nuanced, it's very bespoke, personalized. Ideally everyone would enjoy personalized care when it comes to perimenopause, because it's not just hot flushes and night sweats, and for a lot of women they don't feature at all. They don't feature till really quite late in their perimenopause. It'll be the things you don't attribute to hormonal fluctuations that are bothering you most, like that anxiety or the heart palpitations. Or my new perimenopause symptom for the last 3 weeks has been hives. Never had them before in my life. Never had them before in my life, and I've started getting hives. So that's, as I go through this journey myself, it helps to amplify my empathy for my clients, because they'll come to and go, well, I got tingling in my hands, or my eyes are really dry, or and it'll be like, yeah, they're all symptoms of perimenopause.
Obviously we know that there's this sort of huge shopping list of of potential things that could be, any number of kind of combinations of those going on for an individual. So
Mm.
how, is there a way that we can kind of approach this ourselves nutritionally? And I come back quite often to this sense of, as a layperson, this overwhelm of,
Mm.
there are so many things that we should be doing in terms of trying to kind of eat well and exercise enough, and how, where do we start,
Yeah.
even if we're kind of realizing that we're at the beginning of this process to kind of start nurturing and supporting ourselves a bit better?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because our heads are so full, we're so busy. What I often find with clients, unfortunately, women often come to me when they've probably hit something of a wall. So,
Mm,
what I would love is for women to come to me and going, I feel pretty good, but I think I could feel better, and I want to be better prepared, and I'm going to take some time and invest in myself. It happens sometimes, but more often than not, women come to me when they literally
a
can't
break
get
point.
up in the, yeah, they're
Yeah.
burnt out, they're break point. So what I always talk about with my clients is permission and self-compassion, and they're not woo. And I think it's really important to talk about this, because if we come to our well-being from a place of, right, I need to exercise and I need to eat better, and it feels like another 4 or 5 things to add to that to-do list that never ends, and that compounds the overwhelm. And it's really productive from that point, because it just feels, and invariably the stuff that's just for us will get pushed down to the next day,
Mm.
the next day, the next day. So it's about, I often say, I invite you just to think about what you want for yourself. How do you want to feel each day? What one word would you choose to describe how you would love to feel each day? How do you feel at the moment? How do you want to feel in a year or 3 years from now? Because sometimes we need to take that step back. Just take that. It might just be an hour, one day, where you take yourself off with a notepad somewhere quiet and think about where you are and where you want to be, how you're feeling and how you want to feel, because that can be quite a powerful exercise, because it has to start with you knowing that this isn't a luxury. It's not something that choosing to look after yourself better at this point in our lives is not a luxury. I'd say it's a necessity. So a lot of women they really feel conflicted when it comes to looking after themselves, because it feels like they're taking time away from their loved ones. And obviously there's so much for us to do at this time in our lives. We're raising children, we're looking after aging relatives, we're grieving, we may be separating or divorcing. There's so much going on. If we see our well-being as a necessity, because everything funnels through us, so the better we feel, the more we have to give, the easier all those things are to do. It's a very subtle shift, but I see it all the time, of making that decision to do something for yourself without guilt. And it can be small changes consistently made are powerful. So when a woman comes to see me, and whether she's in perimenopause or not, after the first hour with her, I'll have done a really deep dive into her health history. I will know how I need to help her. But if I said to her, this is what we're going to do over the next 3 to 6 months, she'd probably run a mile, because she'd feel more overwhelmed. So it's my job to take the sting out of that and to help guide and navigate those changes in a way that feel manageable. And that's often the key. It's often the secret, is just to make small changes. So it might literally be, right, what are you having for breakfast? Can we carve out, I had this conversation with a client yesterday, can we carve out 20 minutes or 30 minutes after you've taken the children to school for you to sit and have a proper meal? Can you do that? Well, yeah, but what I need. But not doing that one small thing is having a knock-on effect through the rest of her day and the rest of her week. And so we have to just drill down into the small details. Let's just start with that first meal of the day. And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients say, it's amazing, I feel so much better, I'm snacking less, I had more energy at lunchtime, my mood was better. So that's all we stick to that for a little while, and then we add another change in. And even if those changes take 6 months, better they take 6 months and they don't ever happen because you're so overwhelmed by the idea of making change. So yeah, there is a lot of self-compassion, I think, in this decade, or around this time in midlife, for us as women. We have to make that decision to look after ourselves as well.
And presumably, yeah, it's sort of an incremental thing, isn't it? Once
Yeah,
you've kind of
absolutely.
layered on that new habit, then you can you can add
Yeah,
another and another, and just kind of go at each person's individual pace.
absolutely. And that's the key, is when we make changes that feel manageable, they stick. If we go hell for leather, and some people are that, that personality type where they just go, right, I'm going to stop everything that's not working, and I want you give me that big list. But most people won't sustain that beyond a week. So at that point, it's been a waste of time. So what we want to do is play the long game, because what we're trying to do is, when we're investing in lifestyle changes at this point in our life, it's to serve our well-being for the rest of our life. And that's why I think midlife is such a powerful window for us to do that, while we're anticipating the changes that are coming, while we know the changes that are coming, we get to do something powerful for ourselves, which I see all the time. It's one of those messages I want to sort of shout from the rooftops, because I know it does work.
Yeah, there's definitely, for me, over the last couple of years, been a big mindset shift, I guess, about being much more sort of forward looking and thinking about investing in that longer term health, as you say.
Mm.
It's if you have a period of time where maybe you kind of, your kids are younger, you're focusing on your career and all of that, whatever kind of the mix looks like for each individual's. Maybe you're not thinking about your your late 50s, your 60s, your 70s, but now that really does feel like, okay, that's something I need to pay attention to, and whatever goodness I'm trying to add in to what I'm doing now, whether that's kind of from a nutrition standpoint or a kind of other lifestyle changes,
Mm, mm.
as you say, those things have to be sustainable, because we want to be doing
Yes.
them for the next 30-40 years if we're lucky.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, for me personally, what's been really, I can't think of the right word because I don't want to say motivating isn't the right word, but what brought my well-being into sharp focus over the last few years was the loss of two good friends. So I think there's a degree to which, as mums, when our children are younger, particularly, you are just so busy and so tired that it's a very much sort of day-to-day management, isn't it, of just who needs
Mm.
what when, who needs
Let's just
something,
get through
it's
today.
exactly, let's get through today. And so somehow we think we're infallible, we think that nothing can touch us, because we can't imagine that won't be true, that isn't true.
Mm.
And I lost two friends in 3 years, both mums of three, and sort of grieving them and their loss was a real shake for me. It really shook me, because I wasn't looking after myself properly either when my kids were really little. And it was that realization of, that's why it's not a luxury for us to look after ourselves. It's a necessity. It's vital that we do, because our family's world revolves around us. We're the center of the universe. Often we're the center of the universe for our families. So how can that possibly be selfish for me to look after myself? And that was sort of in my early 40s. So that really pushed me to, that's when I really started to focus on maternal well-being. And now in my late 40s, I feel like, I'm looking 50 in the eye, and I feel like I was 30 10 minutes ago. So that is that kind of, wow, okay, but my body's changing. Everything's changing. I'm observing it as a professional as well as person inhabiting this body, and going, okay, I'm gaining weight, but I haven't changed what I'm eating. What the hell are these hives? And why am I so anxious? All of these things. And I know, as a professional, I try and step back and go, okay, well, this is what you're not doing, and this is what you've let go, or you're not doing this, and trying to bring myself back to hold your own well-being sacred. Hold your own well-being sacred. What do you need? What are you not doing? So I do that with my clients, but I try very hard to do it with myself. And it's not easy, is it? It's not easy. We're not, we do our best, and that's all we can do. But being aware of what we can do for ourselves, I think, is the first step. So I will hear women say, I'm constipated or bloated all the time, or I have a poo once a week. That's normal, right? And I'll say, no, what we want to do is get you going to the loo every day. And just knowledge is power. So if we understand how to support our gut health, if we understand how important our liver health is, if we understand how important our hormonal health is, and how we can make changes to our hormonal health so that we can feel better or manage our symptoms better, whether it's alongside HRT or not, all of those things are valuable, I think, for our well-being long term.
We are all individuals, but do you have like a sort of top 3 or top 5 recommendations for kind of, as part of the energized mum method? What are the kind of the go-tos that are going to help us find more energy?
Let's see, what can I start? I mean, I'll start with breakfast. I would say start with your energy first thing in the morning. If you are waking up absolutely exhausted and you can't get out of bed, if you need sugar and caffeine to get through the morning and out the door, invariably that means that we need to look at your blood sugar balance. And as we go through midlife, that becomes a lot more pertinent as an issue because of insulin resistance. So that's something that we always work on. So I always start with in my group, we start with we replenish. We start with food, our approach to food, and just a little bit of nutrition 101. How do we balance our blood sugar? How do we know how to get through the day with more energy? So our overall energy as women, it has far more to do with what's on our plate. It's not just what's on our plate, but that's not a bad place to start. So we start with our relationship with food, and that relationship with food invariably also goes into dieting and your relationship with food, not just your approach to what you eat each day, but historically, what's your relationship with food? And often I will, especially for women who want to lose weight because they've gained weight in their 40s and going into their 50s as well, particularly before they've hit sort of full menopause, they will talk about dieting and calorie counting and the dieting groups they've previously joined through their life. That's really important to address. If we want to have a happy relationship with food, we have to let go of dieting. We have to let go of dieting. It doesn't serve us. Diets don't work. So that's very much part of it. So it's some Nutrition 101 to understand the best way to support our energy day to day. It is our relationship with food and how to have a happier, healthier relationship with food. And then the big one is stress management, because stress trickles down through every body system and impacts everything we do. So obviously we have these hormonal fluctuations in perimenopause. Our body will always prioritize stress, our stress hormones, because from our ancestors tens of thousands of years ago, those shots of adrenaline were to escape danger. But if you're having that burst of adrenaline sitting in the car because someone has cut you up, or because you've had an email from a colleague and it's enraged you, the body doesn't differentiate between a short burst or to save your life, or something that's just coursing through your body for hours on end. And that your body will always prioritize those stress hormones over everything else, over digestion, for example, over hormonal balance, for example. So stress management is absolutely central to what I do with my clients. And that might be from the point of view of managing your blood sugar, because if your blood sugar gets very low, from a really basic point of view, you're going to feel more anxious, you're going to feel more likely to feel overwhelmed. But also from what's the impact of that stress? What's the impact of that stress to date? So, it could be that you are burnt out or on the verge of burnout. So what do you need to support your health in order to recover from that burnout? And what do you have in place each day or each week that allows you to manage your stress? And this is a game changer. It's not something that we get to do as a luxury, a face pack or a bath once a week. We have to find ways to manage our stress. And I know that's not easy, but that's something that's really worth exploring. And that's central to what I do with my clients.
So let's just go back to what you were saying, actually, that that blood sugar dip, that's actually that's a stressor on our body.
Yes, it is exactly that. It is a stressor on the body. So it exacerbates those feelings of that, can be whether it's anger or anxiety or overwhelm. If our blood sugar is low, then we're going to feel those emotions more acutely. Just from a day-to-day energy management point of view, as a nutritional therapist, I'm thinking about what are you eating. And I would say 99% of the women who come to see me are under-proteined. They don't eat enough protein. And that's really important in midlife, that we have enough protein. So, that's one of the first things I'm going to look at. And someone will say, well, my diet's really healthy. I have a bowl of muesli and a glass of orange juice for breakfast, and I have a salad and a piece of fruit for lunch. And
where's the protein?
Where's the protein? And where's the protein? So, and we know, when it comes to our adrenal health, protein is super important. So if someone comes to me and they're burnt out, I need to make sure they're getting plenty of protein each day. So that's something as simple as that can make a real difference to how we feel each day.
So smoothing out those kind of
those
highs and lows.
We don't want that. We don't want a roller coaster. We want a gentle amble through the day, rather than those peaks and troughs of energy. And we know them when we feel it. When you feel a little bit shaky, or you just feel almost sick, that's your body sending up a flare saying, "Excuse me, undernourished, need more of the good stuff." And what people tend to do is reach at that point, because the brain is screaming for energy. They're going to reach for sugar and caffeine because they need to get through the next hour or 2 hours. But you're just then getting into a cycle of those dramatic peaks and troughs, so drops and shooting up and dropping down, sort of energy. I'm sorry, in my head I've got like a graph that's doing big ups and downs, which isn't very useful on a podcast. But yes, so that's a key one. If you experience those dips in the day, it is going back to, what are you eating? How much protein are you having? How are you starting your day?
Yeah, because we know that the estrogen is also doing the roller coaster thing. So I guess if we can smooth out the blood sugar, we're also helping to sort of mitigate.
Exactly. It is mitigating. It's not, so as our hormones fluctuate, making sure you have a good breakfast isn't going to make a dent in your fluctuating estrogen. But it's all about different ways that we implement, slowly but surely, implement into our routine that helps to support our overall well-being, so that when we're having a bad day, we can do the best we can for our energy and for how we get through the day.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit as well about the impact of stress on our digestion, indigestion, bloating. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, things that people wouldn't necessarily correlate with kind of that perimenopause transition, but actually, I think a lot of people do kind of have those digestive issues. So again, other than trying to kind of manage the sort of the stress levels, are there other things that kind of you kind of suggest to help with the digestion and the
Yeah, I mean,
bloating?
digestion starts in the brain, which may seem like a weird thing to say, but I always talk about the digestive dominoes. So the first, when we think about food or when we smell something, or if we're cooking, that starts our brain to prepare us the food is incoming. And then obviously it's how quickly we eat. So chewing our food is incredibly important. How many times do you chew your food? How quickly do you eat? Are you eating in front of the TV? Are you distracted when you eat? So actually, supporting someone's digestion isn't just about what's happening in their gut. It's about how mindfully they're eating. Do they sit at the table? Are they sitting with a tray on their lap in front of the TV? Are they stressed when they eat? All of these things will play into how well you digest your food, and how well you digest your food has a lot to do with how well you assimilate what's in the food, how you break it down and then assimilate the nutrients that were in that meal. So if someone comes to me with indigestion, for example, I'm going to ask them those questions. What's their eating environment? Do they cook? Do they like cooking? Are they putting something in the microwave, so that there's no sort of, the body isn't prepared almost for the food that's coming? So, you think about our digestive enzymes being stimulated. That's often because we're anticipating food. So all of those things are part of how we improve our digestion. In terms of things like constipation or bloating, again, that can be about going up the digestive dominoes. It can be about how you're preparing your food, if you're preparing food, how quickly you're eating, all those things. Or it might be about, do you need more digestive support? So I often say, if you find that you get indigestion, you might encourage your body's digestive enzymes by having some bitter foods before you have your meal. So that might be rocket or watercress, or some, I know it sounds like an odd idea, but I've had this in Italy a couple of times, sort of grapefruit in a salad. And those foods are I never know if it's radicchio or radicchio, that beautiful red vegetable. That makes a beautiful salad. You can just dip that in some balsamic vinegar with olive oil, and that just, graze on that as a starter before your meal. That helps to stimulate your body's digestive enzymes. That helps you to digest. So, that might be one small addition you make. So we're not changing, we're just adding in something. So that start of before your main meal in the evening might help your digestion. And then it's just, in terms of constipation, that's often a bit more personalized. Depends on what's if that's something that's recent for you, or if it's historical. That often I'll find that constipation is something that people have put up with for decades, and they just go to the loo 3 times a week and they think that's normal and that's fine. And invariably it's something that can be resolved pretty quickly. So one thing I'll often do is suggest you include some foods that are really supportive of getting the bowel movement moving. So that can be stewed apples are great. So when we cook apples, we help break down make the pectin more supportive of getting the bowels moving. Kiwis are great. A couple of kiwis a day can be really helpful for getting the bowels moving. Dried figs, ground flaxseed. If you're so inclined, you can soak flaxseed, not ground, but flaxseed or linseed in water, and then just drink. It's quite mucilaginous, which is the point, but it's not. Some people find that quite difficult to swallow, literally, but that can be really helpful. So I always say food first. What can we add in from a dietary perspective that might just help get things moving? And making sure you're well hydrated is not a bad idea as well. So are you drinking a litre and a half of water a day?
So that's always the one that I struggle with, even though I've got my my little chilled water thing here. But yeah, quite always say to people, I'll very often get to the end of the day and wonder why I've got a
haven't had
pounding
any drink.
headache.
And
I'm like,
and then I'm sitting in the evening drinking water, then I need the loo in the night. So it's better to do it through the day rather than, trying to catch up at the end of the day.
Yeah, I just need somebody to come and tap me on the shoulder 5 times a day. Drink a pint of water. Anyone wants that job, let me know. Oh, Thalia, thank you so much. That was great. And I'll put all the various places that people can find you into the show notes for this episode. Yeah, just quickly remind us what your Instagram handle is.
I am Thalia Pellegrini _nutrition on Instagram. I do have a free recipe collection for breakfast, so breakfast that are ready in 5 minutes. So I can give you the link if you want. You're happy to put that in the show notes so people can access that. Yeah,
because I kind of alternate between scrambled eggs and sort of protein yogurt with protein granola and fruit. So yeah, I'm happy to diversify, so I'll definitely be reading that.
You'll be very welcome.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely chatting to you. It's gone
Thank you so much for having
me. You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.midlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.